Hi. That was beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Yeah, that's good. Yep. I'm going to read you, first of all, holy shit, it's beautiful out here. Oh my God. Oh my God. It's crazy. I pulled up and I was like, oh, is this where I'm reading poems? It's crazy. And all the flowers out here, and then, the greens, and, even the weeds are beautiful and edible, tremendously edible. Not kind of shitty, good edible weeds, but delicious, edible weeds. So, anyway, yes, thank you for having me, and I'm glad to be here. And I have friends in the audience, and that feels important. I'm going to read, I've been writing these I'm going to read from the catalog book, but I've been writing these little things that they're little essays. Someone said, oh, essayettes. So I'll say, yeah, it's an essayette. I've been writing these little essayettes, and I'm going to read you at least one of them, maybe two. But I'm going to start with this one. This is brand new, on the plane, brand new. I just flew in. So I apologize. It's from a book, I think, a gathering of little essayettes. They're all delights. I'm just writing things that are delightful. This is called Transplanted Figs. Today I've smuggled 3 fig cuttings onto a flight from Philadelphia to Detroit. Truth be told, no smuggling has occurred, given as I was carrying the things open and notorious in a plastic bag. Their roots were themselves in a plastic bag, stuck into some moist compost and leaves. But smuggling makes the act feel a bit more thrilling than what it seems, carrying a few sticks in a bag, and therefore more like what it is, cloning a living creature for replanting about 700 miles away. Which, you might have already gone there, given, as I've told you already, it's a fig tree, is another way of saying I'm carrying joy around in my bag. Actually, right now, it's in the overhead compartment in that plastic bag, probably a little funky with my dirty clothes. This is one of those delights that keeps piling up. Given as the fig tree I took these cuttings from, don't forget the living things in my plastic bag up top, which is firmly established and easily my height in my partner's mother's backyard in Frenchtown, New Jersey, is from a grove of figs a bit further down the Delaware in Langhorne, Pennsylvania, where my dear friend Jay's family lived, and where his father grew a wonderful garden, including bitter melon, Asian pears, peaches, anchoy, and yes, these figs. When I first asked him if I could transplant some of his figs, he was moving, and I was heartbroken that garden would no longer be a sanctuary to me. He said yes, if he even said that, walked me out to the grove of figs beneath his massive chestnut tree, and he picked up a pickaxe and started hacking at the thing. I was a little terrified, green thumb that I was. Parentheses. These have these long parentheticals that are hard to hear, but stay with me. Parentheses. 2 ancillary, I think that's the word I mean, 2 connected delights. Mr. Lau, old school, OG, actually got a turtle, put a little hole in its shell, tied a string to a steel nut about the hole's size, which he then dropped into that hole, tying the other end of the string to a stick in the middle of his lettuces so that he could have a steady, This is important, you gotta get this. Okay, so he tied a string to a steel nut about the hole's size, which he then dropped into that hole, tying the other end of the string to a stick in the middle of his lettuces so that he could have a steady, if coerced, slug patrol. You see that? That's old school. That's not the delight. The delight is that his son, my pal Jay, under cover of night, dislodged the nut from the shell, carried the critter on his bike, one-handed, no helmet, to a tributary of Neshaminy Creek, the Little Turtles River Jordan. Ancillary delight too, perhaps with a twinge of irony. When people say they have a black thumb, meaning they can't grow anything, I say, yeah, me too. Though it's actually light brown, and I don't want to get into a discussion of our particular racial calculus, but you know what I mean. Then he stuck them, I'm back to the figs. I'll figure this out. Then he stuck the figs in a bucket full of water, and he did in fact tell me not to let them dry out. Yesterday when I dug these ones up, I used a shovel and hacked at the roots like Mr. Lau, though I was sending soothing mind beams to the tree as I did so. After I got a few good cut-ins, I like shoots that are connected to a larger, well-rooted piece of wood. I took them to the bucket near the hose, filled it up, dropped them in, and showered and dressed for the funeral of a beloved 20-year-old child named Rachel who fell to her death a few nights ago. When my partner told me about Rachel's death, I was away, it was on the phone. She told me 2 butterflies alighted on the butterfly bush we just planted. When we were standing in the back corner of the funeral home during the eulogy, I moved there because I'm tall and I called Stephanie over so we could listen together. Stephanie caught sight of a little silver gleaming thing on the ground. When the eulogy was over, she picked it up. A single elephant earring. Elephants were Rachel's favorite animal. She adored them. When we got home after the pizza and guacamole, my guacamole, a delight. Another delight? Here's the recipe. Avocado, onion, garlic, and salt. Really. I grabbed the bucket, trimmed the little trees into sticks, potted them into the plastic bags, and set them on the counter where they sat there like promises, like little converters, little dreams of coming back into bloom, and how we might carry that with us wherever we go. Thank you. It's called Ode to Buttoning and Unbuttoning My Shirt. I copy so many things out in this book, and one of the things I feel like I'm taking direct lines from Nazim Hikmet, the poet Nazim Hikmet. I say, this is not something to be taken lightly. I think he said that very thing. Ode to buttoning and unbuttoning my shirt. No one knew, or at least I didn't know. Look, I have buttons on my shirt, so I can actually... That never happens. No one knew, or at least I didn't know they knew, what the thin discs threaded here on my shirt might give me in terms of joy. This is not something to be taken lightly. The gift of buttoning one's shirt slowly, top to bottom, or bottom to top, or sometimes the buttons will be on the other side, and I'm a woman that morning. Slipping the glass through its slot, I tread differently that day, or some of it, anyway. My conversations are different, and the car bomb slicing the air, and the people in it for a quarter mile, and the honeybee's legs furred with pollen mean another thing to me than on the other days, which too have been drizzled in this simplest of joys, in this world of spaceships and subatomic this and that 2, maybe 3 times a day. Some days I have the distinct pleasure of slowly untethering the one side from the other, which is like unbuckling a stack of vertebrae with delicacy, for I must only use the tips of my fingers with which I will one day close my mother's eyes. This is as delicate as we can be in this life, practicing like this, giving the raft of our hands to the clumsy spider and blowing soft until she lifts her damp heft and crawls off. We practice like this, pushing the seed into the earth, like this, first in the morning, then at night. We practice sliding the bones home. This one's called To the Mulberry Tree. Are there mulberries growing? I'm sure there are mulberries growing up here. Someone says,
They're on the sidewalks.
oh yeah. That's how you spot a mulberry. You're walking and you see one and then you look
I
up.
saw one last night.
Really? Yeah. To the mulberry tree. Everyone knows it's good luck, if inconvenient, when a bird shits on you. But even more so, good luck if the bird sits on you when you're plucking gold currant tomatoes sweet enough to make your bare feet lift just so off the ground, and the beetles beneath scurry and giggle. And as I moved to gobble one, mouth agape and swooped and a grin at once, the shit slurries half in and half on my sun-warmed chin. Which, forgive me, jiggles me from my reverie. Can I tell you, I read this poem the other night, and a guy came up afterwards and he said, that happened to me too. I was sure that would never, ever happen. Jiggles me from my reverie, for I am only human, swiping the slurp of turd from my mouth, only to see it is mostly purple, the goop seedy and gelatinous. And when I see the bird pitching its swill from the branch above, I know that yes, this shit is mostly berry from that most prolific of trees, which some numbskulls call a weed because it's so prolific and not, they say, particularly useful. These same some call insipid the mulberry's flavor, which I think means tasteless or bland, but given I detect swirled in the shit the sweet of the thing, insipid doesn't fit the bill, but rather most likely describes the sex life of the describer. But why should I get personal, defending a tree's honor? Mostly, I'm happy the birds feast on the topmost branches of these tall trees and leave be, for the time being, my blueberries and soon blackberries and grapes and these little tomatoes. Though to be sure, it is a certain glee as spring gasps into summer and the lowest branches shimmer with their simple booty, which I must jump for, and sometimes high, which I will not probably always be able to do. For jumping and grabbing at once like this, a soft thing is hard. Be gentle, she said, emerging from the dugout beneath the mulberry tree, where the big kids gathered, and we mostly rode our bikes by fast so as not to be snatched to the ground and pummeled, or worse, for they were teenagers. But I knew this early July morning they would be nowhere to be found, and the tree would be burdened with a crop begging to be loosed on my ice cream. She wiped her eyes and yawned and put on glasses, and there was in her hair a small sprig of grass, and she was barefoot, laughing and filling with me slowly my bucket, eating a few when it was full, giggling at the small burst of juice one made on her chin. And behind her, beneath the tree, there was a filthy blanket and a pack of cigarettes and tinfoil wrappers crumpled and shimmering and the frayed remnants of a rope. And seeing me seeing into the terrible future, she put softly one hand on my chin and the other in my hair, turning my head away from what wreckage waited in there and back into the leaves, which too I will do to you, so that none of us will ever die terribly, but stay always like this, lips and fingers blushed purple, the faint sugar ghosting our mouths beneath the tree inside me, which is the same tree now grown inside you. All of us snugged in the canopy on our tippy toes, gathering fruit for good. I want to read you one more of these delights. I don't know if I'm going to title each of these delights, but maybe this is called Waking. Well, right now it says Waking from Awful Dreams. I don't know. That's a bad title. But you get it. Among the things I have learned from Montaigne, I really wrote that. I'm a little surprised I just wrote that, I said. Is that the word essay, which I knew means attempt or try, also means trial. I gleaned this from one of the essays, trials, in my Penguin Classics I scooped from a used bookstore. I'm not sure where. I think it's in the one called On Books, which is On Books. Titling for Montaigne, I'm guessing, was not a trial. It's a nice and honest, sometimes brutally so, assessment of what I imagine was the canon of the day, most of which remains the canon of ours. Remains somewhere in the canon of ours. Plato, Cicero, Virgil. He might mention Homer, Seneca. He finds both Cicero and Plato to be dull and long-winded. I think I'm remembering this right, but definitely Plato, but I think Cicero too. To be dull and long-winded, spending too much plotting time getting to their points. Virgil he adores, and thinks his Georgics the finest poem ever written. I love the Georgics too, so it makes me glad to know I'm in good company that way. But I don't think Montaigne would like this effort, as it has only been warm-up. Maybe everything is always only warm-up. For what, though? One of the great delights of my life, when I get to do it, is staring into the ceiling or closet from my bed, or looking at the slats of light coming into the room, or the down of dust hovering on the blinds, recalling my dreams. Sometimes they are prominent and clear, like the other night when I was to be Hillary Clinton's vice president. I was still me, and was writing something on the board in a classroom where I was teaching a class, and I was thinking to myself, she's got the wrong guy. I am not cut out for this. I was thinking of my tendency toward panic and paranoia, and how that might not be suitable for someone who's second in command. Though I gave her a hug for being the first female nominee, the first female president, congratulating her, and silently thinking, how can I get out of this? Which is maybe one of the themes, not the primary one by any stretch of the imagination, of my dream life. How can I get out of this? Which explains all the airplanes falling from the sky, the tornadoes and the plays in which I have the lead but haven't studied the lines, the last football games I'm supposed to get to but can't, stuck in traffic in my uniform. I just want to ask, how many people have had like a version of the play that they got to be in, they don't have the lines? They didn't, yeah. Or sometime I'm going to sing something, and I don't know the song, and I definitely haven't practiced it. A few years ago, I had a dream in which I'd been fucking my mother for about 2 years. Yeah, that one too. Thankfully, I didn't actually live through that camera. Thankfully, I didn't actually dream through the fucking part, but instead just woke up in the dream to the fact that for the past 2 years, is 2 a significant number? I had been fucking my mother. Just as you would if you just realized you'd been fucking your mother for the past 2 years, I lost my shit. I was pacing around and ranting and hyperventilating, thinking, how could I have been fucking my mother for the past 2 years? Mind you, this wasn't an Oedipal faux pas, which, as far as I'm concerned, is completely forgivable and understandable. He was fucked from the start, and the blind man told him so. As I recall, in the dream, maybe my mother and I were to meet up later, or she was on her way over. A date? When it occurred to me that something, fucking my mother for the past 2 years, was not okay. What have I done? What have I done, I thought. In writing this, I will commend myself for not, in the dream, blaming my poor mother. My dear poor mother, who was also a party to the depravity. I have had other terrible dreams. The one where I murdered someone and then invited people over. Super Bowl? The severed head sitting behind the chair as we chatted over root beer. And other terrible fucking dreams. Certain colleagues. But you might imagine that none was as terrible as the one where I'd been fucking my mother for 2 years. And very few things have been as delightful as when I woke from that dream, let out a groan, shook off the grossness, and shouted, thank you, to no one but me. I told someone that story, like, that I'd had that dream. You know, obviously, you could have, well, not obviously, because I had it and I was like, oh, shit. Like, it's a dream, like, who gives a shit? You know, but I was ashamed and I didn't want to tell anyone. And eventually I told a buddy, and my buddy was like, oh man, that's tough. And he had the same dream, but he didn't tell me. Like, and he was holding out on me. Finally, he fessed up too. You know, this delight stuff is fun to write. And I think probably like a 12 or 13 minute poem might be what to wrap it up.
Yep.
You think? Okay. Actually, could I read you one more delight and then read this? Yeah. Okay. Oh yeah. Okay, this is called Failure. I have one called Analingus, but I got to revise that. I'll read that another time. This is Failure. When I began this little gathering of essays, which, yes, I'm reading Montaigne while I'm writing this, you can figure, which, yes, comes from the French essay, meaning to try or to attempt. I planned on writing one of these things, these attempts, every day for a year. When I decided this, I was walking back to my lodging in a castle, Delight, from 2 very strong espressos at a cafe in Umbertide in Italy, Delight, having just accidentally pilfered a handful of loquats. Do you know that fruit? Yeah. Oh, God, they're so good. They're such a good fruit. Having just accidentally pilfered a handful of loquats from what I thought was a public tree, and upon just a little more scrutiny was obviously not. Delight. And sucking on the very ripe little fruit, turning the smooth gems of their seeds around in my mouth as wild fennel fronds wisped in the breeze on the roadside. A field of sunflowers stretched to the horizon, casting their seedy grins to the sun above. The honeybees in the linden trees thick enough not only to hear, but to feel in my body. The sun like a guiding hand on my back saying, everything is possible. Everything. My mother, I'm back to my mom, who has not always been keen on praise. This might be utter bullshit. I acknowledge my petty little imagination always at work. Though when I got the lead in Our Town, the lead, if the stage manager lead, she almost dissuaded me from taking it. That's a lot of lines, Rossi. And when I got into Columbia with a crayon-filled application, it's almost true, on account of being a good football player, she convinced me that I'd fail out. She didn't know kids at Ivy League schools don't really get less than B's, of which I was easily convinced. Okay, long parenthetical. Keen on praise. She has, these days, for some reason, been praising my discipline. Maybe it's because I go to the gym regularly, or I never eat bacon. But since she said it, and she's my mom, I kind of think it must be true. The first essay, or try, or attempt that I skipped was on day 4. And that's only if you count the bullshit essayette I spoke into my phone on the drive back from Philadelphia on August 3rd. Believe me, I had good reason for blowing it off. I can't remember it now, but I was convinced then. Probably I got tired and thought, oh, I'll just write 2 tomorrow. Except when tomorrow actually came around, I was daunted at the prospect of trying twice in the same day. One try's hard enough. What if both attempts were awful? I'm dramatizing what was probably the minutest conversation happening somewhere deep in my skull. So deep I doubt I even heard it. Or instead, perhaps, I quickly revised my position to regard the occasional lack of discipline. Let me call it failure. Let me call it blowing it off into a delight. Rather than putting myself on the rack and whipping him with a cat of 9 tails, what is that? And pouring alcohol all over the wounds, antiseptic? And then flicking matches at him and telling him to dance, you lazy, worthless goat turd. Are you asking how can one be on the rack and dance at once? You're asking a good question. I decided, despite all the disciplinarians breaststroking the slick and gooey folds of my noggin, double fisting sickles, swinging at anything that looks too glad, to just blow it off. And apropos ancillary delight, the word whatevs. I was probably absent 5 times in 13 years of primary school, despite having had 2 surgeries, pretty serious asthma, and falling hard on my face time to time. I had a paper route for most of these 13 years and literally, not like the kids say, I mean literally, never skipped a day. Even the night when I was about an hour away with a lover, where we were fingering each other after gallivanting barefoot in a thunderstorm. And I would have rather died than missed basketball practice, the first part of which I did in fact miss, 2 days before the playoff game against Upper Merion, where I had to be prepared because they also had a big old bruiser in the post, and we won by 7, but still. I woke in a panic and got there fast as I could on the verge of tears. And about a week before my old man was diagnosed with liver cancer, I was hanging around the house when he was getting ready to head out to his job at Applebee's. I said, "Oh man, blow it off. Let's go watch Hellboy." He looked at me wistfully while tucking in his shirt and sliding his belt through the loops. "You have no idea how bad I wish I could." That was the first time he told me. And so, in honor and in love, I delight in just blowing it off. This is called Catalog of Unabashed Gratitude. This poem. Oh yeah, so this poem, it starts off in this, like, quickly, I'm talking about this orchard that I have helped on. It's this amazing thing, and I was actually part of the founding board, the group of people who became the board, but the founder was this woman named Amy Countryman, and she just did this project where she, like, in undergraduate, like an undergraduate thesis, and she just was studying the urban canopy, the trees in the city, managed by the city, and wanted to figure out, like, how many food producing trees there were in the city. Sure enough, like, very fewer than 1% probably. So she just wanted to figure out what were the various ways that we could do to sort of address that, thinking about food sovereignty, food security. So she proposed a community orchard, and there is a community orchard now in Bloomington. So I talk about that. I also talk about this kid in here named Era Lee. Era Lee, at the time that I wrote this poem, was just an idea, but now she's like a 3-year-old kid. Catalog of Unabashed Gratitude. Friends, will you bear with me today? For I have awakened from a dream in which a robin made with its shabby wings a kind of veil, behind which it shimmied and stomped something from the south of Spain, its breast aflare, looking me dead in the eye from the branch that grew into my window, coochie-cooing my chin. The bird shuffling its little talons left, then right, while the leaves bristled against the plaster wall, 2 of them drifting onto my blanket, while the bird opened and closed its wings like a matador giving up on murder, jutting its beak, turning a circle, and flashing again the ruddy bombast of its breast, by which I knew upon waking it was telling me in no uncertain terms to bellow forth the tubas and sousaphones, the whole rusty brass band of gratitude not quite dormant in my belly. It said so in a human voice, "Bellow forth!" And who among us could ignore such odd and precise counsel? Hear ye, hear ye, I am here to holler that I have hauled tons, by which I don't mean lots, I mean tons of cow shit, and stood ankle deep in swales of maggots swirling the spent beer grains the brewery man was good enough to dump off, holding his nose, for they smell very bad, but make the compost writhe giddy and lick its lips, twirling dung with my pitchfork again and again with hundreds and hundreds of people. We dreamt an orchard this way, furrowing our brows and hauling our wheelbarrows and sweating through our shirts. And less than a year later, there was a party at which trees were sunk into the well-fed earth, one of which, a Liberty apple, after being watered in, was tamped by a baby, barefoot, with a bow hanging in her hair, biting her lip in her joyous work. And friends, this is the realest place I know. It makes me squirm like a worm. I am so grateful. You could ride your bike there, or roller skate, or catch the bus. There is a fence and a gate twisted by hand. There is a fig tree taller than you in Indiana. It will make you gasp. It might make you want to stay alive even. Thank you. And thank you for not taking my pal when the engine of his mind dragged him to swig fistfuls of Xanax and a bottle or two of booze. And thank you for taking my father a few years after his own father went down. Thank you, Mercy. Mercy, thank you for not smoking meth with your mother. Oh, thank you. Thank you for leaving and for coming back. And thank you for what inside my friend's love bursts like a throng of roadside goldenrod gleaming into the world. Likely hauling a shovel with her, like one named Arely Ott, with hands big as a horse's, and who, like one named Arely Ott, will laugh time to time till the juice runs from her nose. Oh, thank you for the way a small thing's wail makes the milk, or what once was milk in us, gather into horses huckle-buckling across a field. And thank you, friends, when last spring the hyacinth bells rang and the crocuses flaunted their upturned skirts, and a quiet roved the beehive, which when I entered were snugged 2 or 3 dead fist-sized clutches of bees between the frames, almost clinging to one another. This one's tiny head pushed into another's tiny wing, one's forelegs resting on another's face, the translucent paper of their wings fluttering beneath my breath, and when a few dropped to the frames beneath, honey. And after falling down to cry, everything's glacial shine. And thank you, too. And thanks for the corduroy couch I have put you on. It feels like plastic chairs. I understand that. Put your feet up. Here's a light blanket, a pillow, dear ones, for I think this is going to be long. I can't stop my gratitude, which includes, dear reader, you, for staying here with me, for moving your lips just so as I speak. Here's a cup of tea. I've spooned honey into it. And thank you, the tiny bee's shadow, perusing these words as I write them. And the way my love talks quietly when in the hive, so quietly, in fact, you cannot hear her, but only notice barely her lips moving in conversation. Thank you, what does not scare her in me, but makes her reach my way. Thank you, the love she is which hurts sometimes, and the time she misremembered elephants in one of my poems, which, oh, here they come. Garlanded with morning glory and wisteria blooms, trombones all the way down to the river. Thank you, the quiet in which the river bends around the elephant's solemn trunk, polishing stones, floating on its gentle back, the flock of geese flying overhead. And to the quick and gentle flocking of men, to the old lady falling down on the corner of Fairmount and 18th, holding patiently with the softest parts of their hands her cane and purple hat, gathering for her the contents of her purse and touching her shoulder and elbow. And thank you, too, the cockeyed basketball court on which, in a half-court 3-on-3, we old heads made of some runny-nosed kids a shambles. And the 61-year-old, after flipping a reverse layup off a backdoor cut from my no-look pass to seal the game, ripped off his shirt and threw punches at the gods and hollered at the kids to admire the pacemaker's scar grinning across his chest. Thank you, the glad accordion's wheeze in the chest. Thank you, the bagpipes. Thank you to the woman barefoot in a gaudy dress for stopping her car in the middle of the road, and the tractor trailer behind her, and the van behind it, whisking a turtle off the road. Thank you, God of gaudy. Thank you, paisley panties. Thank you, the organ up my dress. Thank you, the sheer dress you wore kneeling in my dream at the creek's edge and the light swimming through it. The coy kissing halos into the glassy air. The room in my mind with the blinds drawn where we nearly injure each other, crawling into the shawl of the other's body. Thank you when I just say it plain, we fuck each other dumb. And you, again you, for the true kindness it has been for you to remain awake with me like this, nodding time to time, and making that noise, which I take to mean yes, or I understand, or please go on, but not too long, or why are you spitting so much, or easy tiger, hands yourself. I'm excitable. I'm sorry. I'm grateful. I just want us to be friends now, forever. Take this bowl of blackberries from the garden. The sun has made them warm. I picked them just for you. I promise I will try to stay on my side of the couch. And thank you, the baggie of dreadlocks I found in a drawer while washing and folding the clothes of our murdered friend. The photo in which his arms slung around the sign to the Trail of Silences. Thank you, the way before he died, he held his hands open to us. For coming back in a waft of incense or in the shape of a boy in another city looking from between his mother's legs, or disappearing into the stacks after brushing by. For moseying back in dreams where, seeing us lost and scared, he put his hand on our shoulders and pointed us to the temple across town. And thank you to the man all night long hosing a mist on his early bloomed peach tree so that the hard frost not waste the crop. The ice in his beard and the ghosts lifting from him when the warming sun told him, sleep now. Thank you, the ancestor who loved you before she knew you by smuggling seeds into her braid for the long journey. Who loved you before he knew you by putting a walnut tree in the ground, who loved you before she knew you by not slaughtering the land. Thank you, who did not bulldoze the ancient grove of dates and olives, who sailed his keys into the ocean and walked softly home, who did not fire, who did not plunge the head into the toilet, who said, stop, don't do that, who lifted some broken someone up, who volunteered the way a plant birth of the reseeding plant is called a volunteer. Like the plum tree that marched beside the raised bed in my garden. Like the arugula that marched itself between the blueberries. Nary a bayonet, nary an army, nary a nation. Which usage of the word volunteer, familiar to gardeners, the wide world made my pal shout, oh, and dance and plunge his knuckles into the lush soil before gobbling 2 strawberries and digging a song from his guitar made of wood from a tree someone probably planted. And thank you, Zinnia, and Gooseberry, Rudbeckia and Pawpaw, Ashmead's Kernel and Coxcomb and Scarlet Runner, Feverfew and Lemon Balm. Thank you, Knitbone and Sweetgrass and Sunchoke and False Indigo, whose petals stammered apart by bumblebees. Good Lord. Give me a minute. And Moonglow and Catkin and Crookneck and Painted Tongue and Seed Pod and Johnny Jump Up. Thank you, what in us rackets glad, what glad brackets us. And thank you to this knuckle-headed heart, this pelican heart, this gap-toothed heart flinging open its gaudy maw to the sky. Oh clumsy, oh bumblefucked, oh giddy, oh dumbstruck, oh rickshaw, oh goat twisting its head at me from my peach tree's highest branch, balanced impossibly, gobbling the last fruit, its tongue working like an engine, a lone sweet drop tumbling by some miracle into my mouth like the smell of someone I've loved. Heart like an elephant screaming at the bones of its dead. Heart like the lady on the bus dressed head to toe in gold, the sun shivering her shiny boots, singing Erykah Badu to herself, leaning her head against the window. And thank you the way my father one time came back in a dream by plucking the 2 cables beneath my chin like a bass fiddle strings and played me until I woke singing. No kidding, I was smiling and I was singing and I was singing Thank you. Thank you. Stumbling into the garden where the Juneberry's flowers had burst open like the bells of French horns. The lily my mother and I planted oozed into the air. The bazillion ants labored in their earthen workshops below. The collard greens waved in the wind like the sails of ships, and the wasps swam in the mint bloom's viscous swill. And you, and you, and you, for hanging tight, dear friends. I know I can be long-winded sometimes. I just want so badly to rub the sponge of gratitude over every last thing, including you, which is awkward. The little suds running down your shirt and behind your glasses. Soon it will be over. Which is exactly what the little girl in my dream said, holding my hand, pointing at the roiling sea and the sky, hurtling our way like so many buffalo, who said, "It's much worse than we think." And sooner, to whom I said, "No Dutch out in my dreams." What do you think this singing and shuddering is? What this screaming and reaching and dancing and crying is, other than loving what every second goes away? Goodbye, I mean to say. And thank you. Every day. Thank you.